What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. We have some fun stuff to go over today. We found out a little bit about the NPDs that are going to be announced later on today. Found out about them a bit early from a source that's pretty much been correct the past, year or so. They usually tell us a little early. We're going to go over that. Yeah, it looks like the Switch actually took the NPD for August as well, so they took July and August now. We're going to see what happens going into the holidays. It's going to be very interesting. We'll talk a bit about all of that and where everything kind of falls. And then we also have to talk a bit about EA. It's not going well for them with loot box right now. They seem to want to try to stomp this out quickly, and it's not going away. Guys, first though, I do want to talk quickly about the Nintendo online service that looks to be launching later on tonight on Nintendo's own site. They talk a bit about the scheduled maintenance that's going to take place tonight. And you can actually see they have the maintenance date there from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time. And it looks like that the system update version 6.0.0 is scheduled to go up around 5 p.m. Pacific time. The maintenance time appears to be for, in that case, it appears to be for the eShop and everything. So it's going to be very interesting, but after the maintenance completes, those Nintendo Switch online memberships will be available for purchase. So it's all pretty much going down tonight. We're going to be checking it out here. I'm going to kind of, I guess when we're signed up and everything, look through the NES games and any of the features with cloud saves or any like random things that happen. Now, we don't know everything yet, so we'll see, but we'll check out all that here to give you guys hopefully an idea if it's something you really want to get into and if it's worth your 20 bucks. Outside of that, though, we also had an interesting situation with Tales of Vesperia. See, they posted a tweet, as you're seeing here, that appears to say that the Switch version will actually need a download. So if you remember, we always see, well, not always, but some games like Wolfenstein, NBA 2K19, where you have to download a very large chunk of the game, and they do have to save on cartridge sizes, and that really gets annoying to a lot of people, right? I mean, we always point it out, we get annoyed. It ruins the box art for one, but then it's also an inconvenience for people who just want to have everything on the cartridge. Well, Bandai Namco did correct this in a follow-up tweet that you're seeing here, where they said, apologies for the confusion. That is not the final box art for the Switch version, and it will ship on a 16 gigabyte cart. No additional download will be required. Okay, so good news there. Bandai Namco comes out, they clarify it, that is as an issue. We'll deal with that person in graphic design later on today. Now, you know someone's getting yelled at because that is definitely a hot button topic for Switch owners, having to download more after you buy the actual game. It's nice to hear they're doing a 16 gigabyte cart just to make sure you don't have to download stuff. When I hear about things like NBA 2K19 coming on a very small cartridge to make you download a very large portion of the game, it's nice to see that they did push it up to a 16 gigabyte cart to make sure you get everything. It makes no sense for something like this where it's like a single player RPG experience to have to download anything. I think all the single player games should pretty much really come on the cartridge. I know it's not able to be done for all games. Like Wolfenstein is a pretty large game, and I guess they didn't want to cut into their margin that much, but Tales of Vesperia, that should be able to fit fairly easily on, in their case, a 16 gigabyte cart. So no, you don't have to download any additional files for Tales of Vesperia. So that's good. And we found out when South Park: The Stick of Truth is coming out for the Nintendo Switch. That is actually dropping September 25th. It's going to be $29.99. And there's no retail version apparently planned. This appears to be a digital only thing. So a couple things here. I think $29.99 is like $10 too much. I think it should have been 20 bucks. And I think everyone who had bought the Fractured But Whole should just be getting this straight up because the people on the other consoles got it as a pre-order bonus. So I don't really know what's going on here. I don't think they've talked about that. They probably won't. This will probably just be a straight up paid game, even though it was a pre-order bonus for other consoles. I think that's what this should be, but it looks like it's $29.99 and it's September 25th. The game is good. I actually liked it a lot when it came out. I thought it was really fun, and it does play drastically different actually in terms of battle sequence and everything with the newer ones. So if you missed out on this one, it's actually pretty fun to get into. It kind of deals more with like, I think more like Lord of the Rings type stuff rather than, I guess, superhero stuff with the most recent one. All right, guys, some of the quick stuff out of the way. Let's jump into some of the bigger stuff, starting with the NPDs that appear to be set to be revealed later on today. Usually it's like 6 p.m. Eastern time or so. They'll talk about it, they'll put it out there. Matt does a really good job with that. But on Reset Era, Magic Pork actually put out the information, and they've been right pretty much every single month so far for like the past year. They put it out early. They don't tell us exact numbers, but they give us kind of a ratio and an idea from like if the top one is 1, then like what's the next one compared to that. Here is the post, and you can see they say the Switch was 1, so it came in first. The 3DS 0.35 of the amount that the Switch sold, and the PS4 0.97 or 97% of what the Switch sold. So the PS4 and the Switch were pretty much neck and neck in August. The Xbox One 80%, so that was actually pretty close as well. And then other, I guess, is just a bunch of us, NES Classic, Super Nintendo Classic, stuff like that. 1.39. It's very possible, I guess, that maybe one of those two is actually more than the Switch. It's hard to say. It really is hard to say there. But it does show that so far everything is also growing pretty much year to year, except for the Switch, I guess, was even. The 3DS actually dropped, but the PS4 and the Xbox One have managed to grow. Xbox One massively from last year, but again, that was kind of the build-up to the Xbox One X when I assume everyone just stopped buying Xboxes and they were waiting. They also say that Madden was the top-selling game with, according to them, a bunch of Switch evergreen titles following it. So I'm thinking like Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, maybe Mario Tennis even in there somewhere. I'm thinking of like some of the bigger Nintendo titles that have come out. So that's why I'm thinking Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, and Zelda that would be following it up on the charts. They've actually been doing fairly well on those charts considering they don't count eShop downloads. They just count physical over-the-counter sales. So this is gonna be interesting. We'll follow up with this tomorrow, since we'll find out tonight about the NPDs, and I'll go over numbers and we'll kind of talk about where everything placed. But yeah, it's looking like the Switch took July and August. September, I think, is pretty much locked up as a PS4 month, right? Spider-Man is going to have some ridiculous sales. This is going to be something else. I'm going to tell you that now. It's clearly selling more than God of War, and it's going to top the charts. We know it bundled the PS4 together, PS4 Pro, right, with Spider-Man, so those were flying off the shelves. I haven't bought one, and PS4 is just in general, we're probably flying off the shelves for Spider-Man. They tapped into the mainstream, and that, you know what happens when that takes place? They fly off the shelves, and they usually top the charts. So don't be surprised if September is PlayStation 4 and Spider-Man. Honestly, Spider-Man deserves to be at the top, and what, you need a PS4 to play it, so it makes sense. Next up, let's talk about loot boxes. Again, do you know we talked about loot boxes with EA being criminally investigated in Belgium because they just refused to take their loot boxes out? Everyone else took their loot boxes out, not EA, and it seems like they're making a stand, and people are wondering why. I even wondered at first as well, and then it became very clear that they don't want this to spread much, if they can help it anyway. And it looks like they can't, because it looks like it is spreading, and as you're seeing here, reported by Eurogamer, 15 European gambling regulators unite to tackle loot box threat. That was their headline that they ran, and yeah, it looks like organized at the 2018 Gambling Regulators European Forum, and actually Washington State is going to be joining in as well from the US. They are all coming together to discuss tackling unlicensed third-party websites offering illegal gambling linked to popular video games, with loot boxes being a main focus around this. So it is not working right now for EA to try to stand up, because it looks like everyone else is starting to look at Belgium and then look at this and say, yeah, maybe we should figure this out. Here are a bunch of the signatories that are actually to the Declaration of Gambling Regulators on their concerns related to the blurring of lines between gambling and gaming. And you can see a ton of different signatories there: Austria, Czech Republic, France, Ireland. You also have, of course, at the bottom, UK, and then Washington State. So yes, a state from the US is joining in here, and well, that can also have a snowball effect in the United States. It's interesting because we see the ESRB, the ESA, not that interested in stopping loot boxes, because, I mean, they probably receive money in some way for that. It's probably good for them for loot boxes. So we've seen them show up at different times, try to answer questions, and they're very bad at it. And it's very clear that they are trying to keep loot boxes in the games, whereas a lot of government's legislation don't really want them there now. So we'll see how this turns out. But EA trying to stand up in Belgium is definitely putting a bit more of a spotlight on this. And, well, it's not going EA's way right now. So I'll be curious to see how this turns out. But if other places start to ban loot boxes, does EA just leave them in and say, sue us, I guess, or take us to criminal court? There's only so many times that can happen before the entire world just doesn't want loot boxes, and then there's nowhere for EA to put them. And then what happens? Do they have to go back and make games like, they used to, 15 years ago? That would be the worst if they actually had to make games normally. Ah, man. Those were the worst days, by the way, when you'd buy a game and you'd get the entire game. Man, I hated that. Next up, let's talk a bit about retro gaming news that seemed to really, I guess, blow the minds of most of the internet yesterday. This was on Twitter. Actually, Seth Rogen put out a tweet saying, "Hot tip that's 25 years late, but I didn't have Twitter back then. In Duck Hunt on Nintendo, the second player controller controlled the duck." And I assume he just happened to be thinking about Nintendo, or maybe he had his NES out or something. Maybe they're playing Duck Hunt and he was like, oh yeah, the second controller does that. Well, that pretty much exploded online and people kind of had mind-blowing moments. Now, what's really funny about this is it reminded me of a time forever ago. You get that nostalgia trip for a minute there. This is something that we actually knew about back in the day, and that's because when the NES was around, I was too young, obviously, to own one or buy one, so my uncle actually had one, and I would go over there and we'd play Duck Hunt, and he'd show me that, and I would do that thing where you get really close to the TV with it, so I couldn't miss. And he would take that second controller and he would mess around by making the duck go all over the place, and I'd have a hard time. He would do a thing where he changed direction at the last minute, so I'd have a hard time with it. Eventually, I figured out that he was using the second controller, but seeing that tweet and how many people were really mind blown by it was pretty funny. And again, it was just reminding me of a time past. What's really funny is it's actually in the manual, so I guess we should read our manuals more than we thought. See, that's the problem now. These games don't come with manuals. So how would we have known otherwise? I mean, if you read your manual, most of the people who pointed it out said that they read that in the manual, but what would you do now? How would you read the manual that you could do that? I don't know. I guess manuals did serve a purpose, but now you open your case and it's just blank. So, that's a shame. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PUBG, or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. We talked about PUBG a bit here and there. It's kind of slowed down. Actually, recently it fell below 1 million players playing concurrently, and that's actually an issue for that game considering how many they've sold, how popular it's been. Fortnite really took over, and around that same time that the player count dropped so much, it was Call of Duty Black Ops 4's Blackout mode came out, the beta, and everyone on Twitch was playing it. Even the big streamers who would play PUBG or Fortnite jumped on this game. And to be honest, looking at this Battle Royale mode that Activision and Treyarch have introduced, it's actually pretty fun. It's pretty good. And very recently on Twitter, they said that now 100 people can play in one match. That's one of the big issues I had, was they haven't touched 100 players, so the other ones still have something over them. Not as much. This is actually a better version of PUBG, and I think PUBG is really going to have some issues because they have similar visuals. Fortnite at least tries to go with more of the cartoony and I guess just fun look. This is more gritty and realistic, and now PUBG is struggling even more because the Xbox One X, which does not have great performance, Call of Duty, of course, pushes 60 frames as much as they can. The Xbox One X version of PUBG struggles heavily, and what they're doing right now, at least temporarily, is they are downgrading the visuals, in their mind, pretty badly. They're turning off a lot of effects to try to get that frame rate working while they work on a new patch. In fact, here is pretty much an excerpt from their blog post they did to update everyone, where you can see that they are turning down a lot of stuff. Post-processing, they're turning off motion blur, decrease quality of screen space, ambient occlusion, turn off depth of field, turn off lens flare, decrease eyes adaptation quality. I like the idea of turning off motion blur, by the way. That's good. And they're turning off a bunch of effects. Resolution textures apparently remain the same, but they are pretty much turning off a bunch of stuff in order to get that frame rate decent. That's the big thing, is decent. So while they're downgrading, we see Call of Duty Blackout updating, and Blackout's coming out next month, and that's not going to be good for PUBG. This is going to be bad for them, and I'm going to be curious to see how bad, because when Call of Duty hits, it sells a lot. That's going to be the best-selling game of the year, by the way. I've said it before, I'll say it again, even Red Dead will not outsell Call of Duty. It's going to be serious, and I remember there was talk about Battlefield possibly outdoing it. Battlefield's definitely not outdoing it now. So Call of Duty might take over the Battle Royale scene. The only reason Fortnite would stick around as well as it will is because it's free, and people are already entrenched in that, but it's always, what's the next big game? What's the next big Battle Royale game? And it looks like it's going to be Call of Duty, and PUBG is it's gonna struggle. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is the NPDs with the Switch. Were you surprised that it topped August? It looked pretty close there. It was 1 to 0.97, so 100% to 97%. That's the equivalent of a couple thousand units. It was right there. Let me know your thoughts about that. What do you think the evergreen titles for the NPD will be later on tonight in order? Do you think it'll be like Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, Zelda, or Zelda Mario Kart? Let me know what you think about those and where those would rank. And then let me know what you think about the EA loot box situation or Call of Duty Blackout pretty much taking out PUBG, and PUBG is just downgrading. Let me know what you guys think about all of that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.